So, our first discussion of the day is an examination on the value, or perhaps the perceived lack thereof, of light. It's something that I'm sure many among you will have experienced in your careers, but as we know, although light is so integral to the success of a project, when budgets are tight, lighting is often one of the first things to be cut. But why is this? So, hoping to answer this question and several others, we've got our panel of speakers here today. So we have Stefan Isherwood from Nulty, we have Duncan Jackson from Billings Jackson, and Jasper Sanders from Jasper Sanders and Partners. So thanks very much for being with us today. Before we begin, quick question for our audience. How many of you are lighting designers? A few of you. Okay. How many of you are interior designers? A few of you. Well, okay, cool. And any lighting manufacturers? Cool, quite a few of you. Anyone else that's just not interested in light at all and has just wandered into the wrong room? Okay, cool.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah?
Architects.
Are there any architects as well? Yes, cool. Excellent. So, good to know who we're talking to. The topic of this talk is why is lighting design still undervalued? So my first question, I'm going to start with you, Steph, because you're sat next to me, is do you feel that lighting is still undervalued?
I think it's undervalued ever so slightly. I feel like people respect lighting designers for who we are. We do a certain job and we provide a result at the end. I think that perhaps it's not all encompassing, and there are areas which we work in or don't work in where perhaps we need to sort of increase value. Yeah. Okay. And Duncan, what do you think?
I think so. I've worked as an industrial designer in the building industry for 35 years, and I would say that the issue is that it's not protected in the realm of specification and the construction industry's ability to kind of devalue some of the additional elements that create it. And I mentored in my lighting experience under Mark Major and people like that, and Waterloo International Terminal and stuff. And he said it's from theatre, and architecture is invisible without light. And the idea that you can actually go through an architectural process, have lighting as an adjunct, but not actually integrated into the process of delivering the vision seems, it's just not protected in that way. So.
Okay, and Jasper, you're kind of coming at it from an interior design perspective, so I wonder what you think about lighting and its perceived value.
Yeah, not so much undervalued as a result of being misunderstood. Is my microphone too near? Get a little bit of reverb.
I think it's okay.
It's all right. So I think the layman, everyone can understand the difference between a laminate and a marble, but can everyone understand the quality between good lighting and poor lighting? And probably not. So I think that even can happen with many interior designers. So in times of the past, before Pinterest and Instagram, interior designers were more, I think, probably guided by a technical exercise because you couldn't visualize things so much. And so the technical aspects of design were more prevalent, and you were drawing in 2 dimensions more than you were in 3 dimensions. And I think since social media, Pinterest, Instagram, things have become more 3-dimensional and much more about vibe. But in that, you'd think lighting would be more valued. But I'm not so sure it is, because the technical aspects of it are not coming through.
Yeah, so do you think then that it is kind of seen as being like a nice to have, expendable kind of thing that, when budgets are tight, it's like, well, that's fine, all well and good, but we can cut that if we need to?
Yes, but it's driven, I think, by certain sectors. So if you're in galleries, art galleries, museum sector, very, very much protected, because the people who are commissioning the design, the lighting, they're the people who are operating the facility in the long term. So they are both the client and the operator. Whereas if you're dealing with, say, the residential market, you're very often dealing with an investor. And the investor is keen on the bottom line number. What is their investment and when are they going to get a return on that investment? So it's quite narrow, the lifespan of how much they need to spend. So return on that investment might be 3 to 5 years, but in the meantime, they're hoping that someone else will buy the asset from them. So that becomes difficult to be able to justify lighting. So what we'll often do is to diminish the quality of materials very often, because that's actually more important. It's pointless having high quality lighting if it's not affordable, and then all the materials start to, if the materials diminish, probably that's better than trying to protect marbles and gold, but light it in a poor way, completely pointless. So we'll prioritise lighting and always protect that budget, even though we're not lighting designers.
I mean, that must be music to your ears, Steph, to hear that lighting design is something that's seen as a priority rather than something that's expendable.
I think maybe Jasper's clients are possibly more forgiving than some of us.
I think the important thing is that that you have to always feel that we are giving reason to why we're designing. So things aren't just subjective. It's a fashion or a style or it's the latest kind of look. But you have to frame it in a way in which the investors can understand what the benefit is. So one of our sort of phrases, I guess, is if it's good for people, it will be great for business. So what we can go and do is say, well, look, if we can go and motivate people, if we can attract and retain, whether it's for an office, for a workplace, or it's for commercial residential, or if it's for retail, which I know you work in, Stefan. So if you can justify in commercial terms, then suddenly it has a value. You can sell more products, you can get the best staff, you can keep your rental values. And that way I think you can sell it. And you've taken it away then from being subjective.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, we work generally in the sort of public realm. And the issues that we have is that you create a grand statement with a master plan and then put a station or an airport or whatever. And as you move down the chain in terms of the operational aspects of it, the performance of the space gets more and more tied to actually the people, the space, and how they interact with it. And I would say straight away, the lighting aspect is so vital to that experience when you walk into a public space or you're looking for wayfinding information, all of those things. And then, if you're looking at the architecture and the vision that was created is completely diminished by the way it's lit because it's poor quality. And it is about colour and consistency and value, and it might be the product that actually changing. It's just a kind of complete waste of the ambition that was created in the first place that allowed that team to win the project.
Yeah, and I suppose it's one of the things about lighting is it's such a kind of intangible, kind of vibe-based experience in a way. So, Steph, I'm going to ask you this. Do you think one of the problems that around kind of the value of high-quality lighting is that it's harder to quote-unquote see? To Jasper's point about some people might not be able to tell good or bad lighting design, but it's one of those that if lighting's done really badly, you can tell, but if it's done really well, it's one of those that kind of fades into the experience of the whole space and you don't notice it so much.
Definitely, and one thing that we do as lighting designers as well is we often higher quality fittings, as we were talking about before, so higher quality, which also kind of means more expensive, tend to have concealed lamps. They're really low glare, they're much more user-friendly, and this adds cost, and I think sometimes people don't really see the value in that cost. We're speaking before about having flat panel downlights that kind of poke out of the ceiling a little bit and they light a whole space, but it becomes very flat. Whereas you can have a really beautiful pinhole downlight, and even though everyone always shouts at me for using pinhole downlights because I like them more than anyone else, but they're really deep recessed. They have really low glare. They provide like a very beautiful lighting effect, and that's not always valued.
So do you think one of the things that I'm kind of picking up? Do you think there's a misconception or confusion between value and cost? So people might think the value of it is just the bottom line, this is how much it costs, and not the kind of intangible value.
Yeah, I think Jasper pointed that out, is that the value of the actual quality of light is disconnected from at the end business case. We have a problem with sort of, if you're doing a spec building, then lighting is almost like it just has to meet code. If there's a fire, they can get out. There's nothing else because it's going to be fitted out. And so all of those elements in terms of sort of trying to make the architectural intent valid is validated by the lighting is diminished right from the beginning.
So when you're kind of faced with this mindset, how do you then turn around the client and kind of demonstrate the true value of good lighting?
It's really all in the best value of good design, and that's really determined almost invisibly at the very start of a project. And it's both spatial and visual and brand and optimization, and it's about getting buildings to be loved and used, and that's the most optimum sustainability position. Buildings that aren't loved and they're empty, well, they're pointless, aren't they? However good the materials are that go into them, if people aren't using them, they're pointless. So equally, the lighting is one of those ingredients that goes into the whole kind of recipe of the design. And I think we're, in our kind of very visual age of Instagram and Pinterest, quite hung up on what things look like more than how they are. And we should look less at ourselves and look outwardly about trying to make the world a better place. We have to try and spread a bit of love and kindness. And actually, for me, I think, therefore, design shouldn't be so visual. It's a representation of who we are. And I think if the design becomes just that little bit more invisible, and lighting plays that part, it will actually give a lot more to people rather than being self-conscious. So good lighting is really part of that kind of set of ingredients that really kind of make the whole thing work. And you should be lighting the functions, and you should be giving the vibe. We say it's 5% of the cost, but 95% of the vibe. And I haven't got any lights to sell either.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the analogy that I come up with is doing street furniture, which the most successful street furniture is invisible, because nobody really wants to say, "Oh, that's a really nice bus shelter."
Look at the chair I'm sitting on, as opposed to just sitting on a nice chair.
Yeah, so it is, and I think in a way, I'm not a lighting designer, but so I have a little bit of imposter syndrome here. But it's the aspect of it is the ultimate invisible effect that you cannot actually see it. It is just the things that are illuminated by the light, and therefore it is a really hard way to communicate the value when you haven't actually made the object itself. And so we're one step closer because we actually can prototype it and things.
So as a lighting designer, Stefan, how do you demonstrate that kind of value that we're talking about here, that the creation of atmosphere and mood and emotion?
How do we demonstrate that to our clients? To start with, I would hope that our clients appreciate us, the fact that they pay us, and they know that we've done it for a long time. But
you have clients that pay you. Wow.
After 120 days, but that's not always the case. I think doing mock-ups, doing sketches, obviously from the early stage we do concepts, and we have various different ways of doing concepts. So there are photorealistic concepts for clients that perhaps need that they need to kind of see what it will look like in real life. Me personally, I like to do sketch concepts because I feel like it kind of creates a dream a little bit more and gets them a little bit more involved. We do mock-ups as well, so often we go to site and we'll do mock-ups and we'll say, look, this is what it looks like with no lighting. This is perhaps with the slightly crappy uplight that the Sparky wants to put in. And here is with a manufacturer that perhaps we really like working with, and here's a product, and that almost universally sells the story.
Sure. So something that I kind of picking up on something that you mentioned earlier, Jasper, and I hope this doesn't end up being like an either-or scenario, but is good quality lighting more important than good quality interiors? Because kind of, as you were saying earlier on, you can have a really strong lighting design that can elevate the perceived quality of perhaps inexpensive materials, where you can have the best materials in the world in a space, but if it's badly lit, it's going to look bad. So,
yes, in a nutshell, we'd sooner reduce the quality of the materials, but not the quality of the light, essentially. And you see Doesn't mean that it has to be a poor interior. So you take Muji stores, for instance. For years they've used very low-cost materials. They've got polished, lacquered MDF, breeze block, concrete blocks stacked, beautifully put together, inexpensive, but lit really well. You know, and it creates a really lovely atmosphere, and that's the thing that I think people, if you're driving towards a good experience, well then that's the thing that we should be trying to create.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, except for the door handle, because if you can't get in,
well,
no, it's just that hardware is the next thing that usually gets
into movie stores. They have a closing time.
No, all right, yeah. You know what I mean.
I don't.
So yeah, I think that it's the touch points from our point of view is that the building is let down when those things fail, and illumination of them is a higher level. To be frank, that everything is less, but if you can't actually see it properly, and we have to, there are people who don't see as well as, I'm not seeing as well as I used to, but the idea of public access to spaces and people and being able to make all of those things work is really important about the quality of light and obviously surface materials and things. But and I think that aspect of it is really important for the quality of the environment to be maintained. And the materials, if they're fit for purpose and they don't cause a hazard, that's the next level.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are some of the other ways that a good quality lighting design can create value? Whether that's, influencing behaviour in a space, or encouraging dwell time, or strengthening brand identity, things like that. Feel free to dive in. Go ahead.
We're working on a project with Stephen on the front row here, who's one of our lighting, he's our lighting designer, and exclusive, right, Sir Stephen. And so lighting is, we've been working on this project, and almost like the last bastion of even mediocre lighting would be student residential bedrooms. And it's because the assumption is that a switch on and off and then a light fitting on the ceiling is kind of what the go-to is for the quantity surveyor. So the quantity surveyor, picking up one of your points earlier about value, they know the cost of everything, because that's their job. What is the cost? But the businesses they work for are more interested in the value. But one tends to be trying to address the QS. So the QS is putting in fittings of a cost to try and reach, because trying to get viability of schemes is extremely difficult for developers. I mean, I do feel for them that they're under so much pressure, and now with a lot of the fire regulations as well and sprinkler systems, it's immensely difficult to get things to work. So we've had a rethink of student accommodation, gone back to first principles, and what we've gone and done is put all of the lighting into the furniture, mass manufactured furniture. So we've got low cost, high levels of functionality, and all the lighting goes into the furniture. And by doing that, we can get an economy of scale, so we can get better lighting. It will in the end cost just a little bit more, but we get a mass amount of lighting for a much reduced cost, better quality. We can switch it locally. We improve the experience for the students. But for the developer, they don't have quite so much hassle on site, so they've got a reduced program. They have a better way of maintaining it over time. And ultimately, if we can take those lights off the ceilings, we can reduce the height of the ceiling, because we don't have to have ways for the cable containment. Therefore, we can make buildings slightly lower. Now we've got value. There's a clever way. You always have to try and find a little route to be able to get value out of it, and tell the developer, try and demonstrate to the developer that you're listening to not only their pocket, but the operator who's got to operate it. We've got to think about the planet and the student, because ultimately, their motivation is to have academic success. So that's where it's driving. I've answered your question. I think I've tried to give a bit of a demo on kind of how we have to try and think about things in a more commercial way to be able to try and deliver value.
I suppose, in a roundabout way, that has kind of covered it.
Thank you.
I think in the sense it's being entrepreneurial as a designer to try to look for those opportunities. For instance, like the furniture budget might not even be in the construction budget. And so transferring some of those costs means that the way they're accounted for might be different. So the building costs and the tax basis of that and the actual running of the student accommodation and the fit out could be different. And that could release those funds.
Yeah, exactly,
And that's why all of those aspects should be thought at right at the beginning, the planning phase, not as the design already has happened. So.
Which is one of the secret parts of being a lighting designer, is to move stuff into the joinery budget.
So we had another panel yesterday that was all about longevity in design, and it kind of looked at how when it comes to achieving a design that's built to last, it helps to have good quality, durable and well-made lighting products that, although they come with a higher cost, that cost is outweighed by its durability and longevity. So if we're talking about the value of light, that's something that, if someone's conscious of budgets, they might be a bit concerned about that. But would you agree that it's better to kind of the good quality products outweighs any negatives that might come with an increased cost?
I think for the most part it does. I think that good design is probably a bigger part. You can get low cost products, I think, sometimes that work quite well. As designers, it's obviously we do due diligence to find these good products, that's part of our job, right? We don't necessarily go for the most expensive fitting and then hope that it's going to last the longest amount of time.
Okay, so something that you mentioned there about good quality lighting design, and I'm intrigued on how that's kind of assessed, if it's something that can be assessed, because is there a kind of idea that if it's good quality lighting design if it passes standards and if it hits certain metrics rather than anything else? Like, is compliance mistaken for quality sometimes?
Well, I think compliance is the worst job that you can do, but still meet code, correct? It's the absolute minimum level of light that you can do to stop someone falling out of a window. So I'm not sure if that's a great way of lighting. I think perhaps having a lot of standards and codes maybe makes people who aren't really in the design world think that they can do this, because they just need to put a grid of downlights in or some fluorescent battens, and then you do meet code, and chances are no one's going to fall over on the floor unless maybe out of boredom they'll fall over, or to create some excitement they'll trip over something. But yeah, like, our job is not to use compliance as a way of designing. Obviously we do check that everything is compliant, but that's not how you design anything. Same for interior design, same for architecture, same for landscape design.
Yeah, I would say that go back to something I said at the beginning, which is that lighting, originated in the theatre. Would you say? And I mean, I'm quoting someone else.
As an opera lighting designer, I would say yes.
Yeah. And I think that the engineered side of lighting has sort of, in the sense of the way the construction industry has taken responsibility or been given responsibility of the delivering projects away from architects and the team. I feel like the best approach to all of this, and the best value and the economy, is for the design team to be integrated very early in the project, and to effectively have very good communication between the design skills, so that the architect can have a kind of approach of developing structure and space that is simultaneously being lit by the expertise of the lighting designer, and that those lighting opportunities can also affect the design. So concrete coffers that are uplit, that whole plan, that might make up more space, but in terms of height of building, but in terms of the effect, whatever, and integrating those things. And when you see like a small kind of concrete detail and then there's a light fitting in it. They were working together when they did the design for this to make that work. And those are the things that provide delight. And I don't believe cost. There's a significant cost issue because in a slab of concrete, when you're close to the column, that's where the bending force is the minimum. Shear force is high, but the bending force is minimum. So you can do things like that.
Okay.
Or you can just get a chisel out and a hammer drill and do it afterwards.
Yes. Yeah, of course.
Jasper, do you have anything that you'd like to add on that?
With regards to longevity? Yeah, okay. So longevity matters more in some sectors than others. The example I picked out earlier as being perhaps a gallery or a museum. The fittings obviously where you can disconnect. You've got the drivers, you've got the sort of main bodies, and then you can change the lenses on the ends. Obviously that's really, really important if you've got a gallery exhibition that's constantly changing, being recurated. You're going to need to refocus, perhaps change the colour temperature of the lighting, so you need something a little bit more modular to be able to do that. So that's like a long-term investment, isn't it? You want longevity out of your investment and not have to keep changing everything all the time. A modular system will help. Whereas longevity for an investor, if I was to say to an investor who's got a fund and they're trying to build to get a return on investment, if I say, well, this light fitting will last longer, it won't fly. That isn't a reason for them to go and buy a better light fitting versus a lesser one. If I can say that probably as one of the ingredients in the whole design, this design will be more robust. It will have a greater level of commercial success. It will bring greater levels of prosperity to this building in this area. Then that, along with 2 or 3 other key things, that's the thing that I'll go, okay, yeah, I need that because I might need to sort of eke that out until I can sell the building or get a return. Unfortunately, it's a commercial exercise often, but that isn't to say that that's the only thing we're driving towards. That statement I said earlier, if it's good for people, it's great for business. If you can drive good spaces, good experiences for people, because we care about people, and therefore caring about the planet is part of caring for people, then you can convince investors to buy better fittings.
Yeah. So it's about looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah. A holistic sort of philosophical view, really.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the building that Renzo Piano did quite near here, but I know that the ground plane work that was
Shard?
done. No, it's the one. It's the multicoloured one.
Okay.
I think it's anyway. I may have the wrong one. Anyway, it's down near St Giles. In fact, it's called St Giles, the development. So it's. I remember going to a talk, and the ground plane, which was effectively landscaping exercise, got them an extra £7 pounds a square foot on the rental value. So it does. If the building is effectively more attractive to the people who are going to basically have it, then that makes commercial sense, and it's about how do you communicate that opportunity.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the things that is kind of worth demonstrating when you're trying to kind of not justify your value, but to state your case, is how important emotion is and feeling is in a well-designed space. Nobody goes into a space and thinks, oh wow, this is really up to code. They remember how it made them feel, not that it's in line with regulations. Yeah, sorry, that's more of a statement than a question.
Yes, I mean, in terms of response to that, we do much of our design in 3D SketchUp, which has no lighting in it. And whilst you can then go and do a CGI and you'll go, it looks a bit like this, that still isn't necessarily telling you what the quality of that light fitting is. And you've got to be really careful that you've got to go and meet the client's expectations, that you've got a CGI and then this is it finished. It's got to look within 5% of what your promise is. So in a way you've got to make sure you put good quality lighting in, or you've got to let everyone down. But the process of designing sort of doesn't have lighting in it, because you're designing things in 3D and you're picking materials and you're trying to work out space and you're trying to coordinate services. But it doesn't have light in it automatically.
And that's where you come in.
Yeah, at the very end, yeah. Always a bit too late.
I have a question, if you wouldn't mind, Matt. How do you design with light from the beginning? How do you shade light into 3D as part of being a designer?
So from the concept stage or later than that?
No, quite early up.
Quite early up.
Do you sort of take a space from an interior designer and turn it black and white and shade yellow on it? I'm not being facetious. This is what I used to see sort of 20 years ago, like when we were working in crayons.
Yeah, there'd be various ways. So we receive something from an interior designer or an architect or even a client that has an existing space that's maybe not lit in the way that they want it to be. We can do photorealistic renders. So we were talking about before. So these really intense Photoshop renders that I prefer not to do because I think that it needs to be a bit of magic, which comes from my theatre days, I suppose. There's the highlighter markup, which, now we obviously have a tablet, so we don't have to use a yellow highlighter and print it out on A3 and scan it back in. But we can open Adobe PDF and we can sketch it on there, do that. There's another way, you can Photoshop it, but Photoshop it in a sketchy sense. It's about selling the dream. And then backing it up with expertise in the right products to choose.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that kind of leads into what my final question would be before we turn it over to the audience to see if they've got any questions. It's kind of going back to the original question of the talk, and if you encounter a client that does undervalue light, how do you ultimately combat that lack of understanding, and how do you sell the dream, I guess?
Oh, that's a tricky question, isn't it? It goes back to, I suppose, having a good relationship with the client. So they need to trust you. They need to believe that what you're doing is right. So it's about selling yourself as a designer, about selling their space to them, about selling them their vision of the space. So it's about being competent in the way that you design the product that you know, your technical expertise. Again, show them products. The whole Pinterest concept stuff really does work because it sells the mood of what they want. For me, it would be great to just shout at them and say, "What the hell are you doing? Why aren't you listening to me?" I don't think it works very well. I think it's better to do a bit of hand holding and to stand with them and show them how to do it.
Would you agree?
Well, I'm not a lighting designer, so I'd say that in the sense of making that convincing argument for why you are proposing this, it has to stack up economically, it has to stack up in the sense of being able to tell stories, the story that you're telling in relation to what you're trying to achieve with the client. And analogies are really helpful, and also, the Pinterest or the going to see to show spaces that work and don't work relative to literally the only ingredient that's not consistent, and that's just experience of knowing how to bring people along. Say, do you want your place to look like this, or do you want to have it look like this? And it's up to you.
Yeah, sure.
So,
what's your question?
It was, how do you sell the dream, I guess, when you are faced with a client that does undervalue good quality lighting?
By getting my creative director in front of the client, I guess. She's very convincing. Selling the dream, I think, is really, not just lighting, but the whole vision is figuring out, first of all, how you're going to treat space. And if you have to be very precious about it. Space is the ultimate luxury. That's the thing that then you're lighting. So you have to light space, and then everything else follows. If you've got good spatial awareness and good spatial design, which is why I think at the very beginning we have to be careful not to immediately go in for it wants to look like X, Y, and Z. But how are we creating an experience? Is it low? Is it high? Is it dark? Is it light? And you try and determine it by talking about it. And we actually, at the very, very beginning of a scheme, mass things out almost like a white card model in 3D in a computer, but as a white card model, irrespective of materials, products, look and feel, no lighting. And we get that spatial arrangement right, and then we build up the layers. But along with that, really all projects, all clients are guided around three aspects that you have to balance consistently all the way through the process, which is quality, program and cost. So all the time you have to go, this is really good quality and it's going to achieve this. We can reduce the program and it's cost effective. And all the time you're kind of reporting on those things and you're getting your sign off as you go through, and hopefully you kind of build it up and retain the quality once you get to the end. It's difficult.
Yeah, it sounds difficult. So, right, I'm going to turn it over to this lovely room of people now to see if anyone has any questions for our panel.
I'll go.
Go on.
I didn't want to be the first, but... Oh, right, sorry. Can you not hit me from now? I've got like voice. A few things. So, going back to getting your point over to your client about why you should use a product over another product. I've always said, a car's not a car. It may have 4 wheels and an engine, sometimes it's got batteries now, but that's another thing. But trying to justify why you'd use something of X cost than X cost, and trying to make them understand the reason why you're using that. One other thing that I think that's lacking, we do a podcast, and one thing that comes up in our podcast a lot is, not necessarily, when I say this I don't mean it in a bad way, a lack of education. So we get lots of interior designers come into our place and we work with lots of architects, and then they turn around and say, I didn't really know that. So we explained about CRI and R9 values and all this type, and the type of good quality now, not just the physical specimen of light, the actual good quality of light, and why you should use that. We're not trying to sell somebody the dream and the most expensive product, we're just trying to make them aware why they should be using this based on, like you said, they trust you because they're paying you to do a job. So, and then the other thing I wanted to mention was, do you think that CGIs, they don't include lighting in the correct way? You may see a light in the middle of a room and it looks like it's massively lit up, and in reality, you know that light is not going to produce that CGI.
I think there's I think there's a very high degree of artistic license that architects and interior designers have when they send us renders. Yeah.
Where's that light held from? You know, it's like
Yeah, it's magic.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's one light in this ginormous room and the ceiling's lit beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it goes back to the argument of the pinhole downlight, doesn't it? You know, you get a pinhole downlight and you powder coat it to match the ceiling, and then it pretty much is invisible. So you can meet their brief. They just don't want to pay for it.
well, and the installation cost.
Yeah. Especially if it's trimless, which is my favourite. Yeah.
The lighting in CGIs are basically invisible. You just go and put your light points in the CGI and render it out, and it's not actually where the lights really are, because you're trying to create a vision right to a time scale.
Yeah. Have we got any more questions? Anyone else? Oh, right at the back.
So I have, the question might be familiar, but how do you sell emotion, not the dream? I've been on the side of interior design and the side of lighting design, so I can understand both ways. But at the same time, I'm just thinking of a sample of where in an office setting, there's a shared light, maybe for lighting 2 or 3 desks. Different generations like, unfortunately, different attributes to the light. So I might like my space, my comfort space, very dark. This helps me focus. But the poor person sitting next to me likes it very lit up so they can focus. So how do you sell emotion to the person that is buying the light to furnish this office? That, oh, it would be better, this light, this linear, $20. But you might have it for like 70 to add pixels inside, or maybe a controller, so you can then part of it, leave the other part will lit up, so everyone is comfortable. I have tried, after I've done years of architecture, lighting design, so when we're having a conversation with the client, yes, it might be much more, but have you actually thought about the person, experience this certain space? Some are flexible, this is right because it will produce more if the person is comfortable, but a lot is like, oh, maybe we'll have it later on, or no, it will lift up the budget quite high. So how do you actually sell a certain emotion to a person who hasn't experienced?
I think making a couple of points there. So one is, how do you make sure everyone's comfortable? Well, you can't. You can't please everyone all the time, can you? Where it's perfect for one, it's less perfect for another. So design is about trying to make it as using a sort of a current phrase, inclusive as possible, but in a genuine way, as inclusive as possible, to try and cover as many people as you can. So in function, you might make high settings, low settings, settings for groups, settings for people on their own. Everybody should try and have a bit of a place to go in and find their place in that space. Bright spaces, darker spaces. You try and deliver as much as you can for the needs of as many people as possible, but you can't please everyone all the time, unfortunately. Design is a bit of a generalisation, unfortunately, but you can just try. And if you focus on people, it's great for business. So that's where your motivation has to be. I can't remember what the second point of the question was, Matt. Can you remember? There was something about being comfortable. And then,
I mean, you've kind of covered it.
Have I covered it? Yeah.
You know, the idea of selling the emotional aspect as well.
Yeah, okay, so selling the emotional aspect. So I think it's how you treat people. So emotion as in vibe and atmosphere is kind of one response to the idea of emotion. The other one is really how people are treated. And I used to, probably still do in a way, think of design as being the manifestation of who you think your kind of ideological best friend might be. How friendly are they? Are they kind to me? Is there a place for me? Am I respected? And those values that you put on your kind of utopian best friend, you try and apply that to your good design. And hopefully then that's how people feel when they walk into the space. That's kind of what goes around in my mind to try and achieve it. And whether we achieve that or not is another thing, but we give it a good go.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I've got nothing to add to that. That's
okay.
Perfect.
No comments.
Does that help your... have you got anything else you can add to that?
Just maybe how to convince a person, like I said, who never had this experience. Like if the client is adamant on a certain budget and you want to exceed it just a tiny bit, to provide an emotion to the people who will actually experience this space. Have you ever encountered this?
Like some of the other points I've made, I think you have to frame it in functionality or productivity or dwelling time or optimization. If you can bring something to bear and you have to frame it in the way in which they look at space, as opposed to from an interior designer or an architect's point of view, then I tend to think that describe why it is as opposed to what it is, I think is the thing. If you could, why are we doing this? What are our shared objectives? And to be employed as designers, I've never seen a shared objective as in you want my design because I'm a designer. It's always about how I can make your project full of prosperity and commercial success. So we're sort of focused on helping our clients be successful by creating good emotional experiences that really kind of make sure that people use space. If they're not using it, it's pointless.
Yeah. I think they've got to trust you, like you were saying before. They've got to trust you. That's why they're paying you to do the job.
Yeah, build up the trust.
So that's your first.
Did you have anything to add there, Stefan? You look like you were going to say something.
I was thinking about how you convince the client to do it. I think it goes back again to perhaps sitting down with them, and obviously, you know, you sit down with your client and you say, yes, we've got two lighting solutions here. There's one that's under budget and it's really crappy. There's one here which provides local control to the desks. You know, it's this really nice scenario. Perhaps not everyone's happy, as Jasper was saying, but it's a good medium between the both. So, you know, people can have circadian lighting that changes color temperature throughout the day. It can dim up and down throughout the day. They have local task lights so they can control the amount of light that they have on their desk specifically. And then it's working with the powers that be, the architects, interior designers, QS, to work out if there's a way of squeezing that into the project through. So, you know, through controls or perhaps taking some money away from another part of the project, you know, to provide this well-being. I think at some point we're quite lucky at the moment because a lot of companies are trying to entice employees back to offices, and to get people back to an office is quite hard. You know, at home we all have Philips Hue lamps, and you know we live at home all the time, right? So we kind of rent the nicest space or buy the nicest place that we can afford. We fill it with the nicest lighting and furniture and plants that we can afford. So to then go into an office, you expect the same now. Like we've come out of the pandemic, we've come out of this working from home routine, and we expect that. And to keep your employees and to keep them happy and keep them for a long time, make them work hard, which is what you want in a business. You've got to create these spaces for them.
Okay. I am mindful of the time, and I think I'm going to have to call it there because we have another talk at 2 o'clock. But thank you so much to our panellists today, and thank you so much for being such a great audience.